بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. ربنا زدنا علما نافعا يا رب العالمين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Honored ulama, respected elders, beloved brothers, dearest listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We'll begin by thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us this beautiful opportunity in one of His houses that we discuss and we remind myself and yourselves about, as the Sheikh was discussing, the lives of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And today, inshaAllah, as we see that we have gathered in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to try and gain some knowledge, to try and gain a little bit of an insight into the lives of some of the companions. We begin by getting some insight and some motivation from a Sahabi radiallahu anhu who dedicated his entire life from the moment he came into contact with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam until his eventual demise, and he dedicated this entire life of his that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him in seeking knowledge and spreading the knowledge that he learned. And this Sahabi radiallahu anhu only spent a very short time with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in comparison to the other companions of his radiallahu anhum ajma'in. He spent probably around about 30 months, a few years maybe, 3 years, a little bit less than 3 years in fact, with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But he became what Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had regarded and has termed as Hibrul Ummah, the ink of the Ummah. A person who dedicated his youth. And he's, subhanAllah, when he came into contact with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this particular Sahabi radiallahu anhu, he migrated to Medina only after the conquest of Mecca. And we know that the conquest of Mecca took place in the 8th year after Hijrah of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to Medina. So he migrated to Medina and he was still a young boy at that time. And when Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had passed away, he was 13 years old. Allahu Akbar. So with this in mind, remember, he had only migrated to Medina al-Munawwara after the conquest of Mecca, and when Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam passed away, this particular Sahabi, this young boy, was only 13 years old. And this was none other than Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, one of the most knowledgeable companions of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He had the title of Turjuman al-Quran, the interpreter of the Quran. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhum state that there was not a verse in the Quran except for which Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu did not know the interpretation of, he did not understand, or there was not a verse that he did not know when it was revealed and why it was revealed. Subhanallah. And he had the status, still being a young boy, that the greater and the most senior Sahaba radiallahu anhum would come to this young boy and ask him questions. And when they had differences of opinion and they could not find a clear solution to their questions and to their problems, they would refer to this young boy, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, to clarify that problem for them, or to find them a solution in terms of the Quran and the sayings of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is a young boy who, when Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had passed away at the age of 13, And we look at the books of hadith today, that he has over 1,600 narrations to his name. Subhanallah. At the young age of 13, he had 1,600 narrations of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. By the time he passed away, in the few months that he spent with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, these were ones that he heard directly from Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And when we add up all of the other ones that he heard from the other Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they go into well over 10,000. Allahu Akbar. What an amazing young boy. And being a young boy, so keen and so zealous in learning about the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would dedicate all of his time to being with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He would listen intently when he would recite the Quran, and he would memorize from Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This was a young boy when, before he was born, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was given glad tidings of him before he was actually brought into this world. Allahu Akbar. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam went to his mother, and by the way, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu is a cousin of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ibn Ammi is the son of his uncle. So Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam went to his aunt, Abdullah ibn Abbas' mother, and gave her glad tidings and told her that you are given glad tidings that you are going to have a baby boy. And when he was born, the baby Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu was brought to Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he made a dua for him, and he also did what is known as a tahniq for the baby for Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. And in that time, it was where a piece of a date or a date would be chewed and would be given to the young child to suck on or to enjoy the sweetness of, and that would, or besides the barakat and the blessings from that, it would also give some sort of medical, there would be some sort of medical benefits as well. And this is a sunnah that we practice right up to today. So the tahniq was done by Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam for this young boy. And when Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam saw him, he told his mother that this young boy that you have is special. He's got some special characteristics about him. There is some miza that differentiates him from all other babies. And when he eventually came into contact with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he was maybe around about 10 years old, or a little bit older than that, he would spend all of his time with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, learning about the Quran. And he had this mind that would always question, what does this verse mean? When was it revealed? Why was it revealed? What are the different interpretations of this verse? How should we understand this verse? What are the rulings regarding this particular verse? So you would always question Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and ask him. And he would get answers, and he would memorize those answers, and he would remember those answers. Now sometimes we find in our lives that our children ask us questions. And most of their questions are based on our interaction, where we take them, and our conversations that we have, maybe with them or with other people. For example, you will find sometimes that when you are, say for example, around the dinner table, and the husband and the wife are having a conversation, and then sometimes the child will ask, Daddy, what does that mean? What does that word mean? What is, for example, a certain place, a name, etc.? So based on the conversation they would have, the child would ask a question. And we know this from experience. And we answer them sometimes in a way as best as we can for them to understand. Now, if we look at the questions that Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu would ask Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this tells us that the conversation that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to have, or the conversations he used to have, were mostly about the Quran. Allahu Akbar. And this tells us and this teaches us that from the Sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we should discuss the Quran. And we know from the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ. The character of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his conduct was the Quran. Meaning, he would live the Quran. He would live the commandments of the Quran. Everything that the Quran stood for, everything that the Quran said, everything that the Quran taught, that was the life of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That was his characteristics. But now we should ask ourselves the question, how often do we discuss about the Quran today? In our families, amongst our friends, within our homes. How often do we discuss about a story of the Quran, an ayah, a verse of the Quran, a surah of the Quran? Maybe then our children would ask us, Daddy, what does Surah Yasin mean? Daddy, what does Surah Kahf mean? What about the boy, for example, who was killed? Or what about the ship that was made a hole, that Khidr made a hole in? Why did he make a hole in it? If we discuss those things in front of our children, then maybe they would ask those questions. And they would remember. Remember, a young mind is a very absorbing mind. If you say foul words, if you speak foul language in front of a young child, they will pick it up immediately. If you say good words, they will pick them up immediately. If you say a story to a child, if you tell a child a story, they will remember that story probably until they pass away. They will probably tell their children that story. Sometimes we sing rhymes or hymns or little songs for children or anashid, and they remember those and they sing those songs to their children when they grow up. And we see this from experience. It has happened to us. We remember the stories that our grandparents and our parents have told us, even though that story was only told to us once. And this is because a young mind is a very absorbing mind, a very questioning mind, and believe it or not, a very intellectual mind. But the problem comes is when we fill that mind with things that that mind is not supposed to be filled with. Useless talk, things that don't benefit that child in the future. And this arises from, and most of the time the reason is because we as parents don't know much of the Quran ourselves. We don't know anything about, for example, Surah Al-Kahf, or Surah Al-Fatiha, or Surah Al-Ikhlas. We don't know why such and such a surah was revealed. We don't know much of the stories of the Sahaba, or much of the stories of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. We don't know much of the stories of the prophets mentioned in the Quran, or the other incidents mentioned in the Quran. So we got nothing to talk about in terms of the Quran. But instead we have football to talk about. And our children get interested into football and they memorize the names of the players and the names of the coaches and the names of the teams, because we are constantly mentioning those things and they are at the tip of our tongues. But the names of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum are not on the tips of our tongues. The incidences of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum are not on the tips of our tongues. Because we don't really have that attitude or that zeal or that mentality to learn about the Quran. It's something which is very secondary for us. And wallahi, if we take a moment each day to try and go through some of the verses of the Quran, wallahi, it will make a huge impact. It will have a huge impact, not only in our lives, not only will it change our lives, but it will have a huge impact on our children's lives. And this young boy, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, was so keen to learn about the Quran that he had a friend who was very close to him. And that friend would say, Abdullah, let's go and play like all the other children do. Let's go play with so-and-so and let's go play with pigeons. That time, the children used to play with different things, like now how the children have Xbox and PlayStation and all of the other things that they have today. They used to play with pigeons. And sometimes they used to go hunting for small little animals and lizards, etc. in the desert. So he would say, let's go play with pigeons. And subhanAllah, even Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi, he mentions that he got in trouble with his father because when he was young, he used to always go play with pigeons, so much so that he used to miss out on his lessons. So Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi, he used to get a scolding and he used to get reprimanded by his father for playing with pigeons. So Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu says, "Taraktuhu," I left him. And he would go and play with pigeons and I would go and learn from Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and from the other companions. So when Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was busy, then I would find another companion of his who would have learned something from him, and I would spend time with him. I would walk with him to his field or to his garden or to his house, and on the way we would discuss about some of the ahadith of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, some of the verses, some of the ayat. Wallahi, unbelievable. A young child of 10 years old, 11 years old, spending so much time and having so much zeal for learning this deen. Allahu Akbar. And yes, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did make dua for him. But sometimes we also make dua for our children, but it also has to come from them as well. And we have to instill it into them, and we have to encourage them by showing them a way, by showing them something which is attractive, by being attractive ourselves, in doing something good that they are attracted to it. That's how children grow up. They are inspired. That's how we are inspired. Sometimes you will ask a child, "What do you want to become when you grow up?" They'll say, "I want to become a pilot." Why? Because they're inspired by the aeroplanes that they see when they go to the airport. Wow, what an aeroplane. I want to try one of those one day. I want to be the pilot. I want to fly those one day. They watch a film on TV and they see the aeroplane and they're amazed by it. So beautiful. It looks so attractive. A fighter jet, for example, they say, "I want to become a fighter pilot." Because they see those things and they're inspired by them. But unfortunately, a lot of them are not inspired to become ulama. They are not inspired to become qurra. And why? Because in the house, instead of playing, or in the car, instead of playing Quran, we play music. So sometimes, unfortunately, and it has happened, I've asked the child, "What do you want to become?" And he said, "I want to become a musician." Subhanallah, I want to become a singer. Like so and so, and he mentioned the name of a singer. I can't even remember the name. But, that's reality, subhanallah. And it's very unfortunate. A scholar of mine, one of my teachers, he actually said that one of the ways of learning the Quran, one of the ways of improving your recitation, is to have the recitation playing even when you go sleep, subhanallah. So before you go sleep, switch on the CD or the cassette. That time, in those days, it was the cassette, the small little cassette we used to have. So switch that on the radio, and when you go sleep, even if you fall off to sleep, doesn't matter, let it play. Because your faculties, your ears are awake. Your mind is awake. Your senses are there. It's only your soul that is taken away from your body and taken out when you go sleep. That is why sometimes if someone wakes you up and they nudge you on the hand or on the foot when you're sleeping, you wake up suddenly. It's because you can feel that. You can hear sometimes if someone makes a loud noise, you can hear that noise and you wake up. And your soul is returned to you. So in the same way, your mind is still awake and your ears are still working when you sleep. So that Quran goes into your subconscious and you are listening to the Quran even though you are sleeping. Allahu Akbar. And that way you will learn and your recitation of the Quran will improve. Allahu Akbar. Such beautiful advice. So even when at night we can play the Quran for our children, subhanAllah, they will fall off to sleep listening to the Quran. And what a beautiful way to be surrounded by the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have the protection of the angels. This is the barakat, the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine every night that child is listening to the Quran from the time he or she goes to sleep until the morning. Waking up with the Quran, going to sleep with the Quran. The last thing the child experiences is the Quran. The first thing in the day the child experiences is the Quran. What a beautiful way to end and begin our days. And we can take a page from this as well and try and practice upon this beautiful practice of these ulama and these scholars who have taught us because of their experience as well. Subhanallah. And so Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he would spend a lot of time with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to the extent that not only during the day, but he would go and stay with his aunt Maymuna radiallahu anha, the wife of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he would spend a lot of time at her house during the night, meaning he would sleep over at her house. Why? Because when the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would get up for Qiyamul Layl, for tahajjud during the night, he would also get up and join the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that is why if you look at some of the narrations about the description of the salah of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they are narrated, by Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Amazing. The description of the Qiyamul Layl of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, how he used to perform his Qiyamul Layl, what he used to recite in the first rak'ah, how long his sujood was, how long his ruku' was, what he used to recite in the second rak'ah. Subhanallah. These are narrated by Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, because he used to be there, he used to be present with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And in one narration he says that I was standing behind the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, so he pulled me to be on his right, and I went back again, and he pulled me again, and I went back again. So when he finished those 2 raka'at, he turned to me and he said, why did you go back? And I pulled you to my side. He said, I cannot be in line with you, Ya Rasulullah, I have to be behind you. This is my respect for you. Subhanallah. This is a young boy. And Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made a dua for him. And in one narration he says, Allahumma allimhu al-hikmah. Oh Allah, teach him wisdom, grant him wisdom. And in another narration, in another hadith, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made a dua for him and said, Allahumma faqihhu fi ad-din wa allimhu at-ta'wil. Oh Allah, give him an understanding of the deen. Wa allimhu at-ta'wil, and give him and teach him the interpretations of the Quran. Subhanallah. And fiqh doesn't mean just to know the rulings regarding the Sharia, but to understand the Sharia very deeply. To understand the ayat of the Quran very deeply. To understand how these ayat relate to our lives. How they apply to myself and yourself. And wallahi, each and every verse of the Quran applies to myself and yourself. In every situation of our lives, we will find that there is a verse in the Quran that applies to myself and yourself. And if we want to know how to deal with the situation, then we should refer to the Quran. If we have a problem, refer to the Quran. And this is why Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam also mentioned to Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, and he said, Ya ghulam, and in another narration, Ya ghulayim, inni u'allimuka kalimat. Oh young boy, I am going to teach you some words. And he said, Ihfadillaha yahfadk. Ihfadillaha tajidhu tujahak. Protect the commandments of Allah and Allah will protect you. Ihfadillaha yahfadk. Ihfadillaha tajidhu tujahak. And if you protect the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will find Him always to be on your side. You will find Him in front of you before you even reach Him. Subhanallah. Meaning whenever we are in the need of something, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always be there to fulfill that need of ours. And sometimes before we even realize that we need something, Allah the Almighty will have fulfilled that need for us. That is when we protect the commandments of Allah the Almighty. And these are beautiful words that were taught to a young boy of 10 or 11 years old. Subhanallah. This is a hadith, such a powerful hadith, of which this one hadith ulama have written volumes explaining this one hadith. And when Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu grew older, and when he taught his students this hadith, and he explained to them this hadith that he was taught when he was young, a young boy, subhanallah, volumes of one hadith have been written. The meanings are so deep of this one hadith. And this means the understanding of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu was so deep. From not just from not only when he was older, but from a young, very young age. And wallahi, each and every one of us and our children, we can have a deep understanding of this deen. We just need to ponder over this deen. We need to make it a priority that we need to think of the deen. It needs to be around us at all times. We need to be surrounded by the Quran, by the Sunnah, for us to always contemplate over this deen. If we are always surrounded by magazines which have no benefit, by video games which have no benefit and bring only harm, if we are constantly surrounded by television programs, etc., that bring us no benefit, that are there to entertain us, what does entertain mean? Entertain means to distract you from something. So for example, a guest comes to our house and they say entertain the guests. It means that we have to distract them from boredom. That's what it means. So we entertain them. So we are bored at home, we have nothing better to do, we switch on the entertainment to distract us from our boredom, to distract us from other things, that we concentrate on that. But we have other things to be concentrating on. So the point of the whole of the entertainment industry that we have today is to distract us from the things that we are supposed to be doing, which is learning about the deen, which is practicing about the deen. So instead of, for example, opening a book regarding the stories of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, or a book of fiqh, or a book of tafsir, they are distracting us from that. And we don't learn about the deen, and when we don't learn about the deen, we can't practice it. And we can't practice it, if we can't practice it, we can't teach it. So they distract us from that. And they keep our minds busy. So instead of thinking about the Quran, or thinking about the Sahaba, or thinking about the Hadith, we are thinking about soap operas. We are thinking about football games. When we're driving, our thoughts are, what's going to happen on the league? What's going to happen on the match on the weekend? How do I get the tickets to that match? And we're thinking, we see a person passing by, he's wearing a football t-shirt with a certain name on it, and we get very angry because we know that that person has scored 2 goals against our team. Subhanallah. So sometimes, even when we see an innocent passerby, we give him a dirty look because he's wearing a t-shirt of a player who scored 2 goals against our team. Subhanallah. Sometimes you will find, and this is true, a person has told me this, that when he sees sometimes a vehicle and they have, you know, these, they put these things in the car with a soccer t-shirt or some a football t-shirt, you guys don't say soccer here, football t-shirt, and it has a certain team on it, or sometimes there is a sticker on the car which is for a particular team. So they won't give way, they won't exercise road courtesy or, you know, etiquette on the road because so and so is a supporter of some other team that we don't particularly like. Allahu Akbar. So much is our affinity towards the team that we support that we even forget being courteous, and we even forget etiquette, and we even forget how to be good human beings because of a t-shirt someone is wearing, or of a sticker that someone has on their vehicle, which is because of something that he likes, subhanAllah. So we don't tolerate each other in so many ways, and we are so busy thinking about these things that we have no time whatsoever during the day to think about our deen. And we are being bombarded by all of these things constantly. Fashion, latest trends in music, latest trends in gadgets, all of these things we are constantly bombarded by 24/7, that we have no time to think about the deen whatsoever. We spend hours and hours shopping or looking for trends or looking for something of a particular size or something of a particular color, and then even when we find that color, we say, but I don't like the color of the buttons on it. So we go and spend another 2 hours looking for something with the color of the buttons that we like, subhanAllah. Or I don't like the way the zipper moves on this, and we'll spend hours and hours because it's not the latest trend. It doesn't have this particular logo on it. And whilst we are busy doing that, we are missing out on the Quran. We are missing out on learning about our deen. We are missing out on how we can become better people, how we can become better and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, so keen to learn about the deen, that he would spend time with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam not only during the day, but also during the night. And when Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam passed away, he was one of the people that washed the body of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. How old was he? 13 years old. Subhanallah. And he was one of the people that went down into the grave of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam and received the body and lowered the body into the grave. How old was he? 13 years old. Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah. Even after Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam had passed away, he would go to the companions of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam and ask them about ahadith, and he would learn from them ahadith. He would learn from the teachings of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam to such an extent that if he knew that a particular companion knew something that he didn't know, then he would go to that particular companion's house, no matter what time it was, even if it was during the day. And if it was during the day, for example, at the time of Dhuhr, and this particular narration that I'm quoting or that I'm explaining is about one that was after Dhuhr. So he would go, and if he saw that it was after Dhuhr, he would take his cloth, and in those days, they used to wear, most of the time, they used to wear what is known as the Al-Hidaayah and Izar. So the Izar would be the lower cloth that they would wrap around, and the Izar or the Rida would be the top one. Similar to what we wear in Ihram, something of that nature. So he would take the top one off, place it on the ground next to the door of that particular Sahabi radiallahu anhu's house, and he would lie down or sit on that until that companion would come out. So he would say that even if the wind would blow and it would cover me with dust, and maybe he would find me sleeping when he wakes up and he comes out of his house, he would dust me and brush the dust off me, subhanallah. And he would say, but why are you doing this? Why are you coming here to my house? I would come to you because you are from the family of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And what did he say? He said, Al-ilmu la ya'ti, bal yu'ta ilay. That ilm doesn't come to you. You have to go to ilm. Subhanallah. Look at the humility of this companion of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And they would say, but you are from the family of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We should come to you. He said, no, we go to ilm. And we go seek ilm. From wherever it is, we will go find it. And this shows us that when we have arrogance, or when we have pride within us, you can never learn. A person who has arrogance will never be able to learn. Ilm comes with humility and adab and respect. And talking about adab and respect for the ulama, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he learned something from Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu, another companion. And Zayd ibn Thabit wasn't that old. He was a few years older than Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. According to some of the narrations, he was about 8 years older than him. So if Abdullah ibn Abbas, say for example, he was 13 years old, Zayd ibn Thabit would be probably around about 20, 21. And in this particular narration, some of the ulama explaining this narration say he was about 23. Zayd ibn Thabit was around 23 years old. So Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu was in his teenagers, 15 years old, somewhere there. Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu was riding his camel, and he took the reins off that camel, and then he would bring the camel down, he would follow it tight, and then he would bring it down so that he would alight, and he would help him off the camel and show him so much respect. So Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu says, you can't do this, you are from the family of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he said, هَكَذَا أُمِرْنَا لِنَفْعَلَ بِعُلَمَائِنَا. This is how we have been taught to treat our ulama and our scholars. And this is a contemporary of his, someone who is 23 years old. And he's doing this to him, he's respecting him so much. So Zayd ibn Thabit replied that, and he said, you're not supposed to be doing this. So he said, yes, I am. Then he said, give me your hand. And he kissed his hand. And in another narration, he kissed his forehead, subhanallah. And then he said, هَكَذَا أُمِرْنَا أَن نَفْعَلَ بِآلِ بَيْتِ نَبِيِّنَا. And this is how we have been taught to respect and treat the family of Rasul, the family of our Nabi, of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahu Akbar. This was the love that they had, the humility that they had between one another. And we need to learn from this, that we need to respect our scholars, and our scholars also need to respect us. Meaning, it's a two-way, respect is a two-way street. You behave in a respectable manner, you will earn that respect. You cannot expect to force respect or force people to respect you. And that goes even with the parents and their children, it goes with friends and their colleagues, it goes in a work environment, anyway. If you want respect, you've got to earn it. And this is the relationship between a student and his teacher, even though there wasn't much of an age gap between them. And we need to respect our ulama, our local scholars, we need to ask them. We need to have that inquiring mind. What does this verse mean? Ya Imam, Ya Sheikh, what does this verse mean? What does this ruling mean? What do I do in this particular situation? Is it correct if I do this? Is this business transaction okay? Can I take out this, for example, can I go into this venture? What do you advise? Is this halal? Is this according to the principles of Islam? We need to ask them. And we need to respect them as well. We need to ask them in a respectable manner as well. And also we need to respect their field as well. For example, sometimes we may be educated in a certain field. Say for example, medicine. We are doctors. So we are professionals in our field as doctors. The ulama are professionals in their field. So each one needs to respect the other's fields. Each one needs to respect the other's fields. When doctors are having a meeting, when they're consulting with one another about surgery, for example, brain surgery or heart surgery, they're not going to call a plumber to try and solve the blockage. Yes, it is a blockage, but they're not going to call a plumber. SubhanAllah. So we need to understand that we need to respect one another as well and work together. Because if the ulama have no one to teach, or the people don't have no one to learn from, there will be no direction, there will be no progress in the ummah. And this is why we need to learn from one another. And we need to teach one another. And we need to do it in a good environment, in a happy environment, in a respectable environment, and in an environment that we're all happy with one another and we're comfortable with one another. The scholars need to make themselves accessible so that if someone wants to ask them something, they should reply them and, within reasonable time and in a good way. Sometimes, for example, someone will ask a question, genuine question, and the scholar will reply to him in a very harsh manner. That is unacceptable. That is not the way the Sahaba radiallahu anhum dealt with one another. That is not the way that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam responded to questions that were asked to him. And also, the question itself needs to be respectable. And it needs to be a question that doesn't promote fitna. For example, you see a scholar, for example, the imam comes into the masjid and he's wearing, say for example, pink socks. So now the people go out on the internet and they say, what is the ruling? They go and ask a mufti somewhere in a certain land, in a different country. What is the ruling regarding the imam coming into the masjid wearing pink socks, for example? Now this is just causing fitna. This is just causing trouble, trying to humiliate someone. Whatever color socks he's wearing, is it haram? If it's haram, then it's a different story. But is there anything wrong with that, for example? Why do we have to go to why don't you ask something that will benefit you? The color of his socks, what difference is that going to make to the condition of the ummah today? And we spend so much time and then we'll go around spreading the link and we'll tell one another to say, this is the link, look at what so and so said, and this is our imam, and this is the condition of our imam, and now we can't read salah behind him because he wears pink socks. And we'll go around spreading fitna. And we'll cause dissension in the community. Then some will side with the imam, and some will side with you, for example. And then some, they'll see this problem and then they'll leave all of you. And they'll say, no, you know what, it's best for us not to go to the masjid because there's so much problems, there's so much tension. And then sometimes the imam will also, sometimes they are tested as well, and they lose their patience, and they'll start talking about these issues. And as they say, taking digs at so and so. So sometimes, say for example, when he's lecturing and he's saying, but sometimes brothers, you're not supposed to sell alcohol in the restaurants and your shops. and he's pointing at someone who does that, for example. And then there will be problems in community, there will be problems in society, and that way the ummah destroys itself. It goes into self-destructive mode. And it's something that is uncalled for. Wallahi, there's no need for these types of things. We need to work together. Like the Sahaba radiallahu anhum did. We need to be motivated by them. And you know, these are the lives of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum that they lived for so many years. And we cannot possibly talk about their entire lives in an hour or in 2 hours or whatever it may be. We can guide each other and motivate each other to learn about them, to read about them on our own. And that is the point of it. You know, it's not possible for us, say for example, even to talk about the seerah of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam over 20 hours or 20 different lectures. It's not enough. Remember, he lived his life for so many years. The da'wah went on for 23 years, subhanAllah. So we cannot spend another 23 years talking about the life of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's not possible. We need to learn about it. We need to have that within us, that we need to go and learn about or read about the sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his seerah and his biography. So Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he was so learned, as I mentioned before, that even the senior Sahaba radiallahu anhum would come to him. And as he was still a young boy, in fact in the khilaf of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he used to bring him in the shura. What was the shura of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu? The shura was the council of Badr, meaning the veterans of Badr, the senior Sahaba radiallahu anhum who took part in the battle of Badr, meaning they were Muslims from a long time. And they had a very high status in society. They were one of the greatest people ever to have walked on the face of this earth. And this was a very prestigious gathering. And when there was some serious issues to be discussed, they would call this meeting. And Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu would call these veterans of Badr, and they would discuss the issue. So Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu used to bring along with him Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, young boy. And the senior Sahaba radiallahu anhu, some of them were perturbed. They were distraught, they were upset. They said, Umar, are you favoring him because of something? Why aren't we allowed, or why aren't you allowing us to bring our children, or why aren't you bringing the other younger companions? Why are you bringing him? He said, I'll tell you why I'm bringing him. And he used to keep him next to him, subhanAllah. On his side, in the front of the majlis, in front of the gathering, he used to be his right-hand man, subhanAllah. So he said, I will tell you why. And he asked them and he said, the surah Al-Nasr, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ. When the help and the opening of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes, meaning when Allah the Almighty makes it easy and He helps you so that you can conquer and you can open the different lands and the towns and the cities, etc. وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا. And you have seen people entering the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in droves. فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ. Then make tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and make tahmeed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and seek istighfar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. Indeed, He is oft forgiving and the most forgiving. So he asked them, what do you think of the surah? What is the significance of the surah? So the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they answered and they said, this is to do with the nasr, the help of Allah, and when the help of Allah comes, then you need to make tahmeed of Allah, and you need to thank Him and seek istighfar, etc. And you know, now so many people have entered into Islam and we need to practice upon the surah. And they were giving many different answers with regards to the apparent meaning, the face meaning of the surah. So he pointed to Abdullah ibn Abbas and he said, what is the significance of the surah? And he said, the significance of the surah is that this surah was revealed after the opening of Fatih Makkah, after the conquering of Makkah. And the surah now indicates to us that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has completed his mission and that he's going to pass away. So this was a forewarning and a foretelling that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam his departure is imminent. And they were shocked because none of them had thought of this. And he said, you see, this is why he is here. Subhanallah. So he proved to them. And this was Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Can you believe it? There was the likes of the great scholars, subhanallah, some of the Ashara al-Mubashara, some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu that were promised Jannah in that gathering. The veterans of Badr. And there was this young boy teaching them about the Quran. Subhanallah. In fact, he used to have his gatherings, his durus, his teachers, his halaqat. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum would queue outside his gatherings to learn and to ask Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. So he would tell his students and say, is there anyone outside who wants to know about, who wants to ask any questions? And they would say, yes, that there's a whole queue and there's so many people that want to ask you. So you would say, let the people who want to ask about the tafsir of the Quran and they have any problems with the ayat of the Quran, let them come in and ask. And they would come in and ask. And when they would go, then you would say, tell the people who have fiqh questions, who want to answer, who want to know about the fiqh, let them come ask any questions. And they would come ask, and you would say, anyone who wants to know about language, about lugha, anyone wants to know about balagha, and let them come. And all the different sciences, and hadith, and the narrations of the Prophet ﷺ, all of those different sciences of the deen, he would deal with them one after the other. Sort of like lessons and subjects in a university, subhanAllah. This was the University of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. One of the first ever universities. Allahu Akbar. These Sahaba, double his age, would come to him and ask him about the Quran. They have spent, some of them have spent 10 years, 20 years, some of them have spent 15 years with the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They would still come ask this young boy. And this was because he had so much zeal to learn about the Quran, to learn about the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the point of all of this is to inspire myself and yourselves to learn about the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahi, if we don't learn about the deen, how are we going to practice it? And how are we going to teach it? We may know the basics, salah, zakah, a few things here and there, but how are we supposed to really teach and really encourage and make the deen trendy to the youth if we don't know much about the deen? We're not giving the youth, or we're not painting an attractive picture for the youth, for them to be encouraged towards the deen. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu was a youth, he was a young boy. And there were also trends that were happening at that time in those days. But he found the deen attractive because it was painted in such a way that he found it attractive. And this is our duty, my duty as well as each and every one of us, our duty here as parents or seniors in community, that we need to paint this beautiful picture to the youngsters that they should be attracted to the deen. Mothers need to know about the deen, they need to learn about the deen, so that when they're at home and they're talking with their children and playing with their babies, they can teach them, subhanAllah. And they can teach them about the deen. They can give them lessons about the deen in a way that their children can understand, because they spend most of the time with their children. This is how scholars come up. This is how Imam al-Shafi'i rahmatullah alayh and all of the other great scholars grew up, from their mothers, from learning from their mothers. But if the mothers aren't educated, if we don't take the effort and the time to ensure that we educate our mothers and sisters in the deen, then how are they supposed to pass on that deen to our children? Do we not realize that something is wrong with our educational system today, in terms of our dini education, that we're failing as an ummah? We're failing as a community because our dini status is not improving for the vast part of it. Yes, there's some aspects where, alhamdulillah, there's light at the end of the tunnel and things seem to be, but on the main, we see that society is degenerating. And when there's a problem, we need to fix it. We need to change our attitude. We need to change our methods to suit the time and the place that we're in. When there's a problem, we need to fix it. And we do have a genuine problem. And one of the main problems is our education. Islamic education is seriously lacking. Is seriously lacking. And the amount of knowledge, say for example, that our grandparents had, and the amount of knowledge that our parents have, and the amount of knowledge that we have is just on the decline. And the amount of knowledge that our children will have will be even less. And so that trend will keep going unless we make a change. We need to change the way we face our deen and we face the knowledge of the deen. So with this we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the motivation to turn to His deen. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for us to learn about the deen. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to unite in community so that we can learn from each other and not fight with one another and not argue over petty issues with one another. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us unity of purpose, to grant us love, genuine brotherly love. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant shifa to all of those people, to all of the Muslims around the world who have been afflicted by some sort of illness. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ease the difficulties facing the Muslimin in our families, in our homes, in our communities, and around the globe. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins and to forgive our parents and our teachers. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide our youth to the right path. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect them and safeguard them from all sorts of harm and evil. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to the correct path, to as-sirat al-mustaqim. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to His Quran and to the Sunnah of His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah the Almighty to forgive our sins and to overlook all of our shortcomings. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.
Sheikh, for coming and being with us today. We're really privileged to have him in our gathering. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from him and bless him, inshallah, and give him success in the dunya and the akhirah. Anyone wants to ask any question, they're more than welcome to ask. The next 5-10 minutes, inshallah, we'll wrap up, inshallah. Any questions from upstairs as well? More than welcome to ask the questions. Pass the mic upstairs. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please do feel free to ask the Sheikh.
The brother asked a question, how to be steadfast in the deen. We know, for example, every day we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our salah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for istiqamah and for guidance to the straight path. And we say, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Oh Allah, guide us to the straight path. So the first thing to do is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always for steadfastness, which is al-istiqamah and al-thabat ala al-deen. As Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam always used to make the dua and he used to say, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala deenik. O changer of the hearts, keep my heart steadfast upon your deen. Because the heart, from its name, is qalb. And qalb in the Arabic language means to change. And sometimes it can even overturn. And for example, 1 minute we might feel very angry, and then the next minute we can calm down just by seeing something or listening to something. Sometimes, for example, the wife will be very angry with you, and then you give her some flowers or some roses, and the tables have turned. So that is the nature of human beings, the nature of our hearts. They can turn. So sometimes we can feel, we can listen to a lecture and we can feel like, we're very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our iman increases. And then the next minute we go home, we watch a program, we're inspired by it to do haram, and then we end up engaging in haram. We are tempted. So that is why we should always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first of all for istiqam and thabat ala deen, for steadfastness and to remain on the straight path. The second way is to follow what Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has left behind. And he has said, تَرَكْتُ فِيكُمْ أَمْرَيْنِ لَن تَضِلُّوا مَا تَمَسَّكْتُمْ بِهِمَا كِتَابُ اللَّهِ وَسُنَّتِهِ. That I have left behind two things, which if you hold steadfast onto them, you will never go astray. So if we want to be steadfast, we need to hold on to these two things. And the moment we leave these two things, we will go astray. And these two things are the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us in the deen, and whatever Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has commanded us to do, and whatever together is mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah that we need to stay away from, that we should stay away from that. And we should stay away from things that lead us to that. You know, there is a common principle in Islam where the ulama say, مَا لَا يَتِمُّ الْوَاجِبُ إِلَّا بِهِ فَهُوَ وَاجِبٌ. That whatever in terms of, and here the term wajib, but we would understand it as farad, something being obligatory. So something that cannot be achieved without an obligatory action, which cannot be fulfilled except by another action, it makes that action also obligatory. For an example, we have salah. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ. We know it's farad, we have to perform 5 daily prayers. And wudu, we cannot perform our salah without having done wudu, for example. So the fact that we have to fulfill an obligatory action by another action also makes the wudu farad or wajib upon us, because we cannot fulfill the salah without the wudu. In the same way, something which leads to haram can also be categorized as haram as well. And we need to stay away, and we need to close these doors that lead to haram. Sometimes someone might say, but it's not haram in itself. Yes, it might not be haram in itself, but if it leads directly to something which is haram, then it also makes it haram. Or at least it's a very dangerous door to enter through with, or to a very dangerous path to follow, even though it might not itself be haram on its own. And sometimes we need to also ensure that our company is correct. Sometimes we might be following the sunnah, we might be learning, we might be doing many good things, but we spend our time with the wrong company. And the wrong company has a huge effect on us. Because sometimes, believe it or not, we want to impress the people that we're with. Or we feel that we need to be with them, so we need to do things with them, together with them, and we need to do some of the things that they do. And sometimes this is called peer pressure. We need to live up to the Joneses, to keep up with the Joneses sometimes, as they say as well. So we need to do certain things so that people can see us in a certain way, and we can seem to be trendy, or we seem to be doing something. We need to dress in a particular way, for example. Although this might not be Islamic, but we give up our Islamic principles to please society, as they say, to please the Joneses. And we need to be very careful. We always need to put our Islamic principles first, keep our priorities correct. Whatever it may be, even if it upsets people, and even if they talk to say so-and-so is looking like this, and so-and-so is dressing like as if they're back in the 60s, so be it. As long as what you're doing is Islamically correct, there is no problem with that. Whenever we do something, or whenever we say something, always have this in mind to say that, is it within the boundaries and the parameters of the Sharia? If it is, then there's no problem with it, you can go ahead with it. But if it isn't, then take a step back and realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this ability to realize that what we're doing is wrong. And stay away from that. Go back and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us this realization, and to stay away from that. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to always keep us away from those types of things. So to quickly recap some of the ways, and these are not all of the ways, but the first way is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second way is to learn and keep the Quran and the Sunnah very close to us and to follow that. And the third thing is to stay away from things that might tempt us in terms of, the place, the environment, the things that we listen to, the things that we watch, and our company as well. So these, inshallah, if we hold on to these things, hopefully we will enable us to stay steadfast and to remain steadfast and to become closer to Allah. Any other questions?
Jazakallah khair
Barakallahu feekum.
to our Sheikh, to our guest. We really appreciate him coming, taking time out from his busy schedule to come and see us.
Always a pleasure, always a pleasure.
Allah Ta'ala, bless him and give him barakah, inshallah. We always do dua for him.
Ameen, ya
And we do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
We love you too, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.